welcome to another episode of the Armchair Crew Chief. My name is Jordan. Hope you guys are having a great week. We are just rolling right along into the playoffs, so let's go ahead and get started. We had Texas last weekend, and surprisingly there was some good racing all the way through. I've said in the past Texas can be kind of a boring race, but let's go ahead and get started with the Xfinity race here and go ahead and get in the qualifying. We had our top 10 qualifying. Riley Hurst was 10, Chandler Smith 9th, Brandon Jones 8th, Parker Kligerman 7th, Sam Mayer 6th, Austin Hill 5th, Josh Berry 4th, Custer 3rd, Trevor Bayne 2nd. Every time he's been in that 19 car for JGR, he has just done an amazing job. And then getting our pole was Justin Allgaier. So just diving right along into our stages. Stage 1 ended. Our top 5 were John Hunter, Trevor Bayne, Cole Custer, Austin Hill, Justin Allgaier. Some other notables: Brandon Jones 6th, Parker Kligerman 7th, Josh Berry 8th, Sammy Smith 9th. Moving right along into Stage 2, we had our top 3 were Austin Hill, Cole Custer, and Justin Allgaier. This seemed to be one of those races where you just had Allgaier running away with it to an extent, but then going out towards the end of the race, him and Parker got into it on the on pit road. That just ended up hurting Parker some, but him and both John Hunter were able to get back up pretty quick to Allgaier, who ran most of the race. He ended up leading 133 laps, and our winner actually led 38. But it was a great race for that 48 team, and how they ended up finishing. And you know, they were getting loose. A lot of these guys kept getting loose when they weren't in that PJ1, and then even the PJ1 started having some effects on it as well, where they weren't able to. They would get loose going into the turns and such. So that ended up hurting a lot of guys, getting a lot of wrecks. Trevor Bayne was one of the guys notable in there. Riley Hurst got into an accident. Sam Mayer. So, I mean, there was a lot of these guys that got into some accidents or just hurt themselves, just the way everything turned out. So, just going through with everything, 10 laps to go. Parker Kligerman was up at the top, and John Hunter Nemechek got around him and was able to score the victory for JGR going into the playoffs. But congratulations, kudos to Parker Kligerman. Strong showing, even though he did have some tough times there, finishing second in the race. Sammy Smith got third, Chandler Smith got fourth, Allgaier fifth. So, I mean, kudos to him, because he ran one heck of a race, and it was, yeah, he fought it, and it was hard fought and won. So, once again, kudos to him. So let's go ahead and dive into our playoff standings here with the Xfinity Series. We're looking at our guys. On the outside looking in, we had Parker Kligerman, who was 1 point below the cut line, Jeb Burton, Josh Berry, Sam Mayer. Those are you guys on the bottom looking out. And, I mean, honestly, they're still pretty close that, whatever can happen, one of these guys can jump up, even Sam Mayer, and do pretty well and could make it in. We have leading at John Hunter, Justin Allgaier. Both those guys have wins. They're locked in pretty much. Cole Custer, Austin Hill, Chandler Smith, Sammy Smith, Sheldon Creed, and the guy right above the cut line fighting with Parker Kligerman will be Daniel Hemrick. This is one of those races that it's just one of these seasons. It could come down. I thought it was going to be Austin Hill. I don't know now. I mean, John Hunter's had a good, strong showing second half, so it's one of those that, it's really too tough to tell, but it's shaping up to be a pretty decent playoff run for all these drivers involved and moving forward with that. So let's go ahead and dive into some more. Go in and dive in with the with the Cup Series there that ran, and it was one of those things. Bubba Wallace got his pole this year. Chris Buescher, once again, such a strong showing, started second in the race. Keselowski third. RFK's really been kicking it up and doing really well. Ty Gibbs is up there as well. This is where we started seeing Trackhouse start kicking back up. Ross Chastain started fifth in the race. Daniel Suarez eighth. So you started seeing them make a turn. It's a little too late in my book, I think, for these guys at Trackhouse to make any moves or any splashes going forward. But we had, this race was kind of crazy because you had a little bit of everything. Kyle Busch got loose. He was the first guy that got knocked out. And, one of the other guys, Martin Truex Jr. got loose and sideways, and he was able to save it. But it was one of those things. He couldn't get his car right pretty much all day long, and that's a running story for that 19 team and how they handle. Joey Logano had some rough times with what was going on. They kind of got into it. Austin Dillon got into an accident. His accident actually will cost him. He got penalized, I guess I should say. It'll cost him next race because he ended up losing his tire. And the crazy part about it is the rim came off, but the carcass of the tire was still there, and then it finally came off too. Same thing happened to Todd Gilliland. He lost his tire. I think it was Todd Gilliland who lost his, but we had a couple guys that ended up just losing their tires, two guys, and they'll be hurting next week with missing some guys for that race. Ty Gibbs ended up getting into an accident there. J.J. Yaley, Kyle Larson, he tried to clean his car up and go. It got tore up really bad though. Eric Jones, he ended up getting into some of the accidents. Allmendinger, Texas ended up being the accident-prone race that we see from some of these other tracks, and we're just looking at it, 27 down to 36, almost 10 cars involved in accidents during this race. Kyle Larson, he ended up leading. I thought he was going to do something and win this race. He was going away with it, and then he just got he led. He just got into the outside wall there, so it was one of those that was interesting. Again, I thought he was going to end up getting the win. Bubba Wallace, strong showing. He was up there pretty much the whole entire race. Stage 1 winners, top 5 were Michael McDowell 5th, William Byron, Christopher Bell, Chris Buescher, Tyler Reddick. Tyler Reddick got the stage points. And then stage 2, we had our top 5 were Buescher, Blaney, Hamlin, Eric Jones, and Larson. And, I feel for Blaney because he was doing pretty well too, and then he just it just got away from him. So our finishing top 5, we had Denny Hamlin 5th, Christopher Bell 4th, Bubba 3rd, Ross Chastain 2nd, and then William Byron, 1st. He ended up getting the 300 win for Hendrick Motorsports, and they brought out the stupid big hats once again, and they look silly. Even Rick Hendrick had it on, and oh my goodness, that was... If you want to see something crazy, they actually lined up everybody, all the drivers and so on, and they all had their 300 win big hat for Hendrick Motorsports. And let's just say I wouldn't want to be one of those drivers because that looks silly. I think it even looks silly on Noah Gragson, but Gragson's the kind of guy that can pull it off, in my opinion. Byron's one, he's very quiet and reserved, so it's tough to see, or it's tough to see that. I've heard him being called Mr. Vanilla, and he lacks that energy. You could almost argue for that. So it makes that hat wearing look even weirder than that. But see what happens. Going forward, let's go ahead and take a look at our playoff standings here, and get this clearer picture of how everything is looking going forward. We are in the round of 12. Going to move to the round of 8 after 2 more races. We have Talladega and we have the Charlotte Roval coming up. So go ahead and look at it. Bubba Wallace, with his strong showing, he called himself out and said he just choked. I don't know if it was him choking or if he just some people would say he ran out of talent, but I don't know if it's that or what. But it didn't help him, and he is still below the cut line. But instead of being last like he was coming into Texas, he is now the first to last person out. If that makes any sense to you guys, he is 2 points below the cutoff line. You had Tyler Reddick sitting 10th, 3 points below the cutoff line. Blaney 11 points below the cutoff line, and Kyle Busch 17. So anything can happen. I mean, we're moving into Talladega Super Speedway, where you could have the big one and then boom, everybody's out. So it's tough to tell what will happen. So moving in here, excuse me, 8th is Kyle Larson. Keselowski is 7th at 8 points. Chastain 12 points above the cut line at 6th. Truex 19 points above the cut line at 5th. Christopher Bell, Chris Buescher, Denny Hamlin, and then William Byron is locked in, going on to the the round of 8 there. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Super Speedway. Like I said, it's one of those wreck fests, and then I still call the question mark in there for the Roval. It's hard to tell what will happen there, I think, because there's too many variables. And I just recall the one, I know I've talked about it on here, but the wreck where Jimmy Johnson took himself out of playoff contention because he wrecked Martin Truex Jr. Instead of just sitting behind him for second and getting into the playoffs, he wanted to go for that win, and it ended up costing him the playoffs, and that was pretty ridiculous in my book. Another one of those that I think about is Chase Elliott. He ended up wrecking in the first one. I think it was the first Roval, but he ended up wrecking, like running into the tire barriers going into turn 1. He ended up coming back and winning that race, which was nuts. So, we have some changes coming up to the Roval, which we'll talk about next week with, restart zones and such. So, we're diving into that season there with everything. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens with that and who can come out on top. Looking at it right now, the favorite for this race, pretty much, they're already calling for it to be, let's see who they got here. The early odds of possibly winning this race are, Keselowski sitting there at 11-1, Blaney next, Logano, Buescher, Byron, Denny Hamlin, and Chase Elliott sitting there. So it's one of those things. I still think it could be anybody. I mean, look at Ricky Stenhouse. I don't want to take away from his Daytona 500 win, but, that's one of those things that anything can happen. You get the big one, knock out half the field, you're sitting there, and it could be anything going on. So it is a challenging thing to do with that going forward. But anyway, moving on to we'll go ahead and go over our weekend schedule here. We are going to have trucks running Saturday. This is going to be a double header pretty much for it's just Xfinity's not even running, so I was going to go with the doubleheader, but it's not. You have the Craftsman Truck Series. They're going to be qualifying and running 9:30 a.m. on FS2 is qualifying. 1 p.m. Eastern is going to be the race, the Love's RV Stop 250. Then we get into Cup Series qualifying at 4:30 Eastern. That will be on USA and MRN. Then going into 2 o'clock Eastern, the Yellowwood 500 will be on NBC, so it's going to be on broadcast TV. MRN's got the call on the radio with SiriusXM carrying the MRN broadcast. So it's it's one of those that we'll see what happens. Trucks, that can be a wild ride too with that. So and then just touching back on the Cup Series, I didn't even put him out there. I believe he finished top 20, but I'm going to confirm that for you guys. But somebody who's had a really good showing, and I mean he's proven that he can run with the big boys, if you want to call it that. Yeah, he finished 16th because Carson Hocevar. I mean, this dude has come in on that 42 team, and he has he's done really, really well coming from trucks straight into Cup Series. So I think he's got a really bright future ahead of him, especially if he can get linked up with the correct team to have the right equipment to push that and go forward with that. So it's something to keep your eye out in this silly season of drivers, signings, and so on. Speaking of that, here's a car open up in Xfinity Series, because we have Sammy Smith that's going to be moving from Joe Gibbs to Junior Motorsports. He's going to take over that Josh Berry machine. If you recall, Josh Berry is going to be going to the 4-car to replace Kevin Harvick, who's retiring. So that is something big there to keep an eye on. Also, we got news today that Raja Karuth and Boris Said will be running in the Xfinity Series going forward. We have Boris Said, one of those longtime road course ringers, seasoned veteran running. He's going to be running the 17. They're both going to be running for Hendrick Motorsports in the 17 car going forward. Said's going to be running at the Roval, where Raja will be running in Phoenix in that 17 car. So it's I'd like to see what he can do in Xfinity. I've kind of hooked my my support to Raja, as we've talked about on this podcast. Haley Deegan's been up there, but I don't think she can handle it. I don't know if it's just trucks are just not her thing. Maybe we move her up. I really don't know, and it's hard to keep supporting her when you see how poor that she does. I mean, we were talking about it. They moved Ben Rhodes' former crew chief to her to help her out, and it didn't work, and they moved him back to Ben Rhodes before the last race. So it's really one of those tough things to figure out going forward. Also, in the driver signing silly season, you could call it, Ryan Preece has confirmed that he is going to be coming back to Stewart-Haas next year, running in that 41 car. So that's something to keep an eye on there. Before we get to the rumor, let's go ahead and follow up with also then for Talladega, we have probably the most renowned, known, whatever you want to call it, sponsor coming out, and just the way they did it was great too. We have the team Shake and Bake, if you recall, from Talladega Nights coming out, where we're going to have Chase Briscoe sponsored and Ryan Preece sponsored by Old Spice and Wonder Bread. We're going to have Briscoe running Old Spice and Wonder Bread, covering Ryan Preece to make it look like Cal Naughton Jr. and Ricky Bobby from the Talladega Nights movie, which, that's awesome, and I hope it brings in a lot more people and this thing gets spread around so people can actually watch that movie. It can connect it, because a lot of the younger people, when they connect this movie, the Talladega Nights, to NASCAR racing, because they haven't seen Stroker Ace. Another movie you can kind of almost link to it, but it's not so much racing, would be the movie with Daniel Craig and Channing Tatum and so on. I can't think of the name of it right now, but Logan Lucky. That's one of those that hovers around NASCAR. But these guys, Stroker Ace, Days of Thunder, these people don't really know those racing movies. The younger people, So to see something like this, I think it's great. It's great marketing in my opinion, and hopefully they can capitalize on this and go forward. And kudos to that for how they handled that. Even Stuart Haas, when they put out their stuff for the sponsorship reveal and how they handled that, making it almost like the movie. That was classic. It was great. But going forward also with that, so let's go ahead and get into some rumors that I heard, which I don't know if it's fully true or not, but Kyle Busch Motorsports is going to be sold and bought by Spire. And the rumor has it, Kyle will keep one of the seats there, but he doesn't have to worry about the day-to-day operations, the financing going with it and everything like that. So, if that happens, it happens. Spire's proven to be one of these that's sucking up a whole bunch of stuff, and kudos for them, hopefully to continue and bring on this age of NASCAR to help bring it to younger people. And the person who I heard this from, they kind of said, it looks like Andretti's got his hands all over the Spire deals going forward with how everything's going. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out going forward. In the coming weeks, we should be getting the NASCAR season lineup schedule for next year too, which we'll cover that when that does come out too. But we'll take it one step at a time here. So anyway, guys, that is pretty much it for this podcast. It is a short but sweet. I apologize if it sounds weird or anything like that. I'm actually out for a business trip, so I don't have my usual podcasting equipment. But anyway, I just wanted to thank you guys for this. Hope you like, share, follow, comment. If you guys want to cover anything, let me know. We can go ahead and get that touched up. So anyway, hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you next week after Talladega.